Hey everybody, welcome to Harmon Garage. I'm Aaron and we're back on Project Groundskeeper. Today I'm going to start on the front suspension with the new lowering spindles and springs. And first thing I got to do, I got the control arms all cleaned up, but I still have to paint them and let them dry. So I'm going to get started on cleaning those up and painting them. And during the dry time, I'm going to continue where we left off in the last video on dressing out the motor, getting stuff hooked up, stuff like that. Tons of work to do on this truck. I can find plenty of things to do during the dry time. So let's get started. This is where we left off. Just got carburetor and stuff like that on. And my alternator brackets and everything are dry now, so I can put it on. I can't do the power steering and AC yet because I need the exhaust manifolds that we have ordered. We're waiting on to show up. But I still have to pull the power steering pump and the lines and stuff off of that other truck. And I still need to take the power brakes and stuff off that other truck too. So I might go ahead and get those parts pulled, get them cleaned up, get them painted also, so that we can get all that stuff on. Because the more under the hood stuff that I can do before I put the fenders back on, the better. So I'm gonna get started and we'll get this thing going. All right, just a little update. Got a couple coats of paint on both sets of control arms. Letting them sit out here and dry. I'm cleaning up the drag link, tie rods, idler arm, pitman arm, all that stuff, and getting it ready to paint next. And then I still got to do the steering box, intermediate shaft, and probably a whole lot more stuff. But for what I want to get going on today, that's the stuff I got to have cleaned up. So we're letting paint dry and then we'll get started. All right, before we go any further in the video, I want to ask you guys a big favor. If you're watching this video and you're not subscribed to the channel, please go down there, hit that subscribe button, and while you're there, might as well hit like too. It's right next to it. So if you could do that for me real quick, I'll wait. Okay, thank you. Today's been kind of a behind the scenes day. Been doing a lot of prep work to start putting this front suspension together, and I think I'm just about ready. I gotta go pick up brake pads, and other than that, we should be about ready to throw it together. So show you what I got done today, and it took all day. I got all the front suspension components cleaned up, painted, all the steering components cleaned up, painted. Opened up the box that the drop spindles came in. They're already painted nice, so we don't have to worry about them. And just so I felt like I accomplished something on the truck, I went ahead and installed the alternator because all the brackets were dry. So that's about it for what I got done today. It's late in the afternoon. It's hot. I've been going at it all day. I'm gonna go home, grab something to eat and whatnot so I can build that energy back up to come over tomorrow and bring you guys along on the ride putting this front suspension on. So give me a few minutes and we'll be right back on it. All right, finally got all the parts cleaned up, painted, ready to go. So we're gonna start throwing this front suspension on with the drop kit. First thing I'm going to do here is put the lower control arm back on, which would have been a lot easier to do before I put the motor in, because these U-bolts, you can't really get on them with an impact once you already have them in there. And there's these little nubs and these cross shafts that line up. and they can be kind of a pain to get lined up, but what I usually do, I just put my U-bolt in and start it, and then once you get to where it's actually starting to tighten down on the thing, you can turn the lower control arm and it will line itself up. Throw our U-bolts in here. I'll go ahead and start tightening them. I'm not going to tighten them all the way. I'm just going to start tightening them, get them close, and then once they get close, I'll be able to line that up how we need to, and then we'll tighten it all the way down. Got that lined up, got that one snug. Now I can just go ahead and tighten the rest of it up. I may be wrong. I'll look on the other side, but I think it only has a dowel, alignment dowel on the front. It's been a while since I did one. I'll have to look to verify that, but once they get lined up and you got everything clean good, they go right in. That's the biggest thing too, when you're doing stuff like this, make sure you get everything cleaned, like really good. That's all nice and tight. Next thing I'm going to do is put my upper control arm on. I didn't show you guys this when I took it apart, but I took there's a little half moon spacer that fits into the back of the crossbar on the upper control arm, and then there's alignment shims in there. So I took them and I taped them together where they came out of, and then I marked them. So this is driver's side, rear, and front. So I know when I go to put my control arm back on where I need to set these back in here. So I really need to go over and clean these up and get the rust off of them. So I should probably do that, because why clean up, paint everything else, and put it back on if you don't do everything. So let me go get these cleaned up. I'll be right back. Okay, I got my shims and my spacers all cleaned up. Next thing I'm going to do here is throw this upper control arm on. If you look at it, it's got little dishes here, and they fit on those spacers, so you want to make sure you got that on right. And then take it, slide it on there. Put our nuts on. Forgot to mention too, if you guys can see and notice, I took the bump stops off the upper and lower control arms because when you lower it, it's going to come down on those bump stops and sit on them, and you don't want that. For one thing, it's holding it up higher than it's actually going to sit, and second, if you do leave them and it's sitting on those bump stops, it's going to be a real rough ride. But I took them off. What I'll do is once I get the suspension on and get the truck, get some weight sitting on it where it needs to be, then I'll take the bump stops, see how much space I have, and I'll go back and trim them down, cut some of them off to where they'll have a little bit of movement before they hit the bump stops. You're not going to get a whole lot of suspension travel on a lowered truck, but you want a little bit, and you want that bump stop there, because if you really max your suspension out, it could go metal on metal, and that hurts a little bit. Alright, got that done. Now we're going to grab our spring. Once again, we got 3-inch drop springs and 2.5-inch spindles. So I'll get that as close to in place as I can. There's a little pocket up here that it sits in. Right like that. And then there's a pocket down here at the bottom it sits in. So you want to make sure you get all that stuff lined up. And then we'll get our new spindle here. Hopefully we can pinch these control arms close enough together and compress that spring enough that we can get it hooked back up without lifting the truck up off the jack stands. So once again, 2.5-inch drop spindles. I always go 2.5 because I like running factory wheels. And if you go 3 with 15-inch wheels, the lower control arm will hit the inside of the rim. So we don't want that. 3-inch springs, 2.5-inch 2.5-inch spindles, 3-inch springs. You don't ever get a true, they say 2.5-inch spindles and 3-inch springs, you're never going to get a true 5.5 inches. So I'm going to call it 5, which is what we want because we're going to do 5 in the front and 7 in the back. So that'll be good. Just watching as I do this, and if I keep seeing the spindle going up, then I know we're not picking the truck up yet. Like right there, that last pump of the jack, the spindle didn't go up farther on the ball joint, so I knew we were starting to pick the truck up. But worked out good because it was just enough to get it on. So got our spindle started. I'm going to go ahead and take the weight off of it. Let it hang, and then we'll be able to tighten up our ball joints. This is going together pretty smooth. They usually don't go together this smooth. Might have something to do with the fact that I've done these suspensions a lot of times. Or may just be getting lucky. I'm going to go with luck. We'll go ahead and tighten down our ball joints. And our cotter keyhole lined up. I got to go get a different wrench for this one. But you get the picture. I'm going to go ahead and tighten that ball joint down. Then we got our control arms back on, our spring in, and our, I call them knuckles, spindle back on. And next thing we're going to do is put our rotors and stuff on, and that'll get that all set up. So I'm going to go and tighten that down. I'm going to get all the bearings and stuff ready in the rotor, then I'll come back and we'll start assembling the brakes. Okay, you can see I put the dust cover on. I got them all cleaned. These are the original ones. I got them all cleaned up to put back on. Now, this little cutout in it right here is supposed to be directly at the bottom because your lower control arm can come up into that. But with the drop spindles, the spindle being raised up, your lower control arm should never come up into it. So, and these spindles, rather than having your brake caliper kind of up here at an angle, it moves them down to directly in the back. So I got my covers cleaned up, I got them back on. Now, before I even show you guys, I'm going to answer the question. I'm reusing the old brake rotors and wheel bearings. Now, I'm expecting somebody to wonder why I'm using the old rotors and wheel bearings, and there's a couple easy answers. First off, like I said, this truck had original everything. Original rotors, original wheel bearings, original brake pads, original calipers, all that. So I mic'd out the rotors, and they are true as can be. There's barely any wear on them whatsoever. I mean, they could probably be turned at least once, if not twice. They don't need to be turned. There's no grooves in them. They're nice and smooth. Another reason is they're balanced from the factory. They've got balancing weights in them, so they're balanced. And you're not going to find new ones that are balanced, and so these are good. There's nothing wrong with them. We're going to reuse them, and it'll save some money, because everything's getting so expensive nowadays that if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So I took the wheel bearings, inspected them very thoroughly, cleaned all the old grease out of them, which the grease wasn't even that bad, but I'm not going to put bearings in something without cleaning and greasing them. So there's no pits in them, there's no wear marks on them, they're nice and tight. So I'm going to go ahead and repack them with new grease and finish putting this together. Now, I have bearing packers, all that stuff. I choose not to use them. I do it old school by hand. It doesn't take much more time than using a bearing packer, and I can visually sit here and watch every single roller get grease in it. So I know I'm getting good grease all the way through. That, and I can test myself and see how good a job I did cleaning the bearing out, because you only want to see new grease coming through, which is what I'm getting, so I'm happy about that. Now, I got grease all the way through the bearing. Now I'm going to take some of the leftover that was inside, and I'm going to rub it around the outside of the rollers really good, and then I'll take just a little bit and put it in this race. I've seen people that take and pack grease into the in the hub, in the rotor, in between the bearings. As far as I'm concerned, that's just a waste of grease, because I've never seen a scenario. Every one I've pulled apart that somebody's done that, there's just a glob of old grease in there. It doesn't, the bearings don't suck the grease in or anything like that. I've never seen that happen. I've seen bearings that were bone dry, grease worms got them, and the whole inside of that was filled with grease. So you're just wasting grease, making a mess for the next guy or the next time you have to do it. So I packed the bearings really well, put new seals in. That's all you should need to do. Same thing with this bearing. Just going to go around, make sure we get good grease coming out all the way around. Lube up our bearing good on the outside. Now I got a mess. I'll promise you this is even more fun if you do it without gloves on. The reason I'm wearing gloves is because I don't want to get grease all over the rotor and everything else. So, going. Take this rotor. Oh, skipping a step. Wheel seal. Slap that in. Set it up here and put it on. I'm going to turn you guys off for a minute because I'm noticing my camera battery is about to go dead. So I'm going to change that out. I'll hammer this seal in, and I'll get that rotor set up there, and then I'll bring you guys back and show you how I set wheel bearings. Alright, so I got a socket that fits my spindle nut here. I'm going to go ahead and crank that all the way down. and tight. Rotor won't turn. Now I know I got my seal seated all the way. Now I'll go ahead and back it off. Now it should be nice and loose. And I'm going to go ahead and tighten it down while I'm spinning it till I feel just a little bit of drag. Right there. Now I feel some drag. I'll check my rotor. Don't have any wheel bearing play. So now I'm going to look for my hole for my cotter key, and it's right in between two things. So I'm just going to tighten it up just a little bit till it lines up. Nope, I gotta go back to the other one, that's too tight. So loosen it up. Make sure my hole's lined up. Right there. Rotor spins free. No play. We're good to go. I'm going to put my cotter key in here. And then I'll go ahead and put my cotter keys in my ball joints. And this part will be done. Put our dust cap on, and next thing will be rotor and brake lines. So put the dust cap on, I'm going to put my cotter keys in my ball joints, and then we'll move on to that. Alright, I went ahead and knocked out the other side real quick, and when I say real quick, I'm lying, because put this side together on camera and it just breezed through and fell together, and then I go over and knock the other side out real quick so everything's going together evenly, and it fought me from the word go. So either way, we got it done. Both sides are done. I ended up putting new wheel bearings in the passenger side because when the truck came here, the other side didn't have a dust cap on it, and the grease was all dried out and the inner bearing was shot. I mean, it was pitted and beat the crap and all that stuff, and if I'm going to replace the inner one, I'm not going to do it without replacing the outer one. So I went ahead and replaced both of them. Got that done, and we're ready to throw brake calipers on. Or, yeah, brake calipers. I don't know what I'm thinking. So just setting our new pads in. Apparently, I didn't get the caliper compressed far enough. So I guess we'll do that first, and then we'll put our new caliper on. Alright, we got that compressed a little bit further. Let's see how it goes now. Hey, look at that. Slides right on. But the inner pad has a wear indicator on it, and they're side sensitive. So you can't, they'll only fit one way. these suckers are tight. I think what's happening is that caliper is kind of pushing itself back out a little bit. So I'm going to go get a gentleman's hammer and give her a couple little love taps. I do not know what is keeping this from going on. Unless the youngster at the parts store gave me the wrong brake pads, but they look right, so I don't think so. Might be that dang wear indicator hitting. Try it the other way. See if it likes it better. That's exactly what it is. That dang wear indicator's hitting. And alright. I wasted enough of y'all's time. Let me figure this out and we'll get back on it in a second. Okay. Still not quite sure what the reasoning was, but we got it. So, that's all that matters. Alright, caliper's on. Okay, we got new brake lines, and there actually is a left and a right, and I got them in a hurry. I usually have them tell me which one's left and which one's right so I can mark it down on the bag. But I got in a hurry and I didn't this time, so we're just going to, I think that's the other side. We're just going to see which one fits best and do it that way. And to be honest, neither one of them fit. Part of that could be because we lowered it. It happens sometimes. These aren't even the right brake lines. They don't even fit the calipers. So I guess we're going to go back to the parts store and see what we can come up with. I know my parts store, I know I'm not going to be able to get them today, so we'll go ahead and move on to the next thing, and I'll put the brake lines on when I get them. Okay, we're moving on from the brake lines for now. Next thing we're going to do, I got some Beltec Nitro Drop 2 lowering shocks. These are for a 4 to 6 inch drop, which we're doing by number 5.5, but realistically probably like a 5. So these are the correct for our application. They come with all the parts that I need, the stud to put in the frame rail and all that. Slide it on here. I'll go ahead and get that all tightened up. I'm going to put the caliper and the shock on the other side, and then we'll move on to the steering. Alright, I'm back. It's a new day. It's going to be a good one. And we're going to get the steering and suspension done on the front old groundskeeper here. So, as you guys saw right before this in the video, I got the caliper and stuff on. Went to put on the brake hoses and they were the wrong ones. I went over the weekend, got the right brake hoses. So we're going to get those on. I'll get the caliper and the brake hose and the shock on the other side. And then we're going to get the steering box, drag link, tie rods, idler arm, pitman arm, intermediate shaft, all the steering stuff back on. So that's my goal to finish off this video. I want to get that stuff done. So we're going to get to it, and here we go. Okay, so a little bit earlier in the video, we were trying to put the brake line on, and it wouldn't fit. So the reason was the old brake line had hard corners here. It was a perfect square with sharp 90-degree corners, and this piece here was turned. See how that one's angled and offset? It was turned so it was straight. So the corners wouldn't fit inside the circle in the caliper, and the way this was straight, I couldn't get it up against the caliper where it needed to be because this was hitting on the ball joint. So now that we got this angle and we got this one with the corners knocked off of it, it should go right in there. So get our new copper washers here. Got spider webs or something hanging from my hat. And then there's problems you run into when you lower something, and a big one is the brake lines. They start hitting everything. And this one's still hitting too, but we'll be able to make it work. Okay, so what I just did there is the easiest fix to the problem. When you put these brake lines on the caliper, they're supposed to sit like that and go up. And the provisions in the caliper are for it to go like that and sit facing up. If you take the right side brake line and put it on the left side, you can flip it over so that it's sitting, so that it's bolting to the caliper and going down instead of bolting to the caliper and going up. And that gives you all the room in the world. So that's what we're going to do. Put that on there. We'll go ahead and get it hooked in here. It's going to mess up how it mounts over here on the side. You'll have to adjust it a little bit. but other than that, it fits perfect. Alright, all we gotta do is bolt this over here, put our nut on the back side of this, and we got our brake lines installed. Alright, got the brake lines on, and I ended up putting the left one on the left side and the right one on the right side in order to make them all fit right. And all I had to do was make this bend a little bit sharper and then twist it just a little bit to get it to line up, but it runs right down where it's supposed to. I got plenty of brake hose. I can turn both directions without pulling it tight, so it's going to work out. I got the caliper and the shock mounted up on this side. Next thing we're going to do is install the steering box and all the steering linkages and the intermediate shaft. So I'm going to get going and we'll get that done. Got our steering box all cleaned up and ready to go. I'm going to stick it back in place, bolt it up. Torque that down to the proper specs here. And steering box is installed. Now we'll take our intermediate shaft, put it back on. Need a little tapper device. Cleaned that out really good before I went to put it together, so I'm not quite sure why it's being so hard to go on, but this shaft that goes in the column up here has like a joint in it, and it can move in and out. You don't want it to move too much, so we're going to get this bolted up in here and then we're going to tap it back out. Now we got our bolt in there to hold it. There should be a little bit of a gap between the end of that and your actual column. About right there. So that's good. I'll have to tighten up this lock down here, tighten this up here, and we'll start putting the rest of the steering back on. Alright, we got our steering ready to put back on here now. See how well I can do this without scratching anything I've painted or anything like that. So we'll set our tie rods in. Bring my idler arm up here where I need it. Get our bolt started in that. Start our nuts out here on our tie rods. Get them held in place. Now, before I go too much further, I didn't turn the steering box at all. I know exactly where the column was, and I kept it in the same spot. So everything's going back together the way it came apart. So that should line these rotors and the steering knuckles up. Now it's not going to be perfect with lowering it and all that. It's still going to need an alignment. But I'm trying to get it as close as I can to where it was. Because that way when I go to move it around and whatever I have to do, the steering's close and it's going to track, you know, pretty true. It's not going to be one wheel over here and one wheel over here and, you know, all that crap. So I tried to keep everything as straight as I could. So we should be good on that part. I got the idler arm loosely bolted on. I got my tie rod bolted in. I'm going to go put this nut on the other tie rod. And then I just got to come back and get my pitman arm started. I don't know if I'm going to be able to tweak this into place or if I'm going to have to take this steering box back loose too. I think I'm just going to take the steering box back loose just so I don't scratch anything up. So I'll just buzz 3 of them bolts back out so I can tilt it up, and then I'll tilt it back down into my pitman arm over here. In hindsight, I probably should have put the steering in before the box, but it's all right. Alright, the splines on the steering box for the pitman arm, they've got their normal splines all the way around, but they got one fat spline, and that has to go in the right spot, so you can't mess that up. I mean, you can't clock it wrong, is what I'm trying to say. So the fact that everything just slid back together tells me that I got the steering back where it was. They look straight, looks good, so now all I got to do is just go and tighten everything up, put cotter pins in my tie rods, and we'll have our steering back together. Alright, the steering's all in, back together, everything's tight. Got my other arm on. It looks fairly straight, but by the time we set it down, which we're going to do here in a minute and all that, with having lowered it, it's definitely going to need an alignment, especially camber. But the owner of the truck came over this morning, and I told you guys before, I'm trying to keep this truck as close to stock as possible. With that being said, we did end up getting a set of headers for it, and we didn't get them for performance reasons at all. Like, this is a bone stock 305 with a truck intake. I mean, it's not making any power, it's not anything fancy, but the exhaust manifolds that were on the motor in the other truck were EGR smog pump manifolds, and the motor had a smog pump and all that, which we're getting rid of all that, which is going to help a lot. But I didn't want to take all the tubes out of those manifolds and put plugs in them, and one of them's got a crack in it, and so on and so forth. And we were able to find a set of shorty headers cheaper than we could get replacement manifolds that didn't have the EGR on them. So we went ahead and got the headers, and here they are. They're stainless steel shorty pre-made headers for this truck. Came with gaskets, bolts, collectors, all for under $100. So because they're here and they look cool, I want to go ahead and throw them on. So I'm going to grab those and put them on, and then we're going to end this video. So hang tight. I want to put the headers on now, mainly see how cool they look, and because I don't really have anything in the way yet. So I go in a lot easier without me scratching up a bunch of stuff and whatever else. So we're gonna get them put on here, and it'll help out in the process of everything else. Alright, I got it on there. Got all the bolts started, got the gasket in there. So I'm going to go ahead and slap the other side on. I'll tighten them down, and then I'll bring you guys back and show you the finished product. Alright, well, got the headers the rest of the way on it, and I kind of got a little surprise for you guys. But nothing major, but I did put the roller wheels back on it and set it down on the ground just so you can see the stance. It's hard to tell without the fenders and stuff on, but I've done enough of these that I can tell just by looking at it, and it's not going to be too low, but it's going to be low enough, and I think it looks really good. Everything cleaned up, painted. The motor looks great sitting in there. The headers look great on it. Everything's clean, everything's shiny, and it just looks good. So, you guys ready to see it? Anybody? No? Alright, well, I guess we'll... No, I'm just kidding. Here you go. I don't know what aspect to get it in with the camera to show you what I'm seeing here in person, but I think it looks great. Ignore those wheels, they're not even there. Just a figment of your imagination, but it looks good. Headers look great. Everything looks good in there. Exactly the look I was going for. and I couldn't be happier. The wheels even still look straight. It is going to come down a little bit more. Obviously we don't have the weight of the inner fenders, the fenders, the core support, the radiator, the hood, and so on and so on, and all that stuff. I mean, we're probably going to add another, just guessing, maybe like 300 pounds to it. So I don't weigh quite that much, but that'd be similar to me standing on the front of it. And I don't want to stand on the front of it to see how much lower it goes, because I don't want to take a chance at scratching the frame or putting footprints all over it. But you know what I mean. We don't have the total amount of weight on the front yet, so it should still come down more. Try to get back here. I don't know, I'm looking at it in person and I can really see how much lower the front is, but when I look at it through the camera here, it doesn't really look like it's at all. So it does have a heck of a rake to it. I mean, let me see if I can line my hand up with the bottom of the truck. You just have to take my word for it. I mean, it's not going to be this low, but it's going to have the stance that we want. I mean, it's not going to be slammed on the ground, but it's going to have a nice hot rod stance, and that's what we're looking for. I don't need it to scrape when you go over a speed bump, or you have to go into a parking lot at an angle or anything like that, because it's too low. But yeah, it's going to look good. It's going to be low enough, and that's what we wanted. So it's coming along great. Every time I do something to it, I get excited about it again, and I'm happy as can be. I just keep walking to different spots of the shop and looking at it at different angles, and I love this truck. I said it before, I'll say it again. So next video, we're going to get the bed off of this thing and tackle the rear suspension. We're flipping the axle on the back, which, if you don't know, that means taking the rear end from underneath the leaf springs, putting them on top. And once we get that done, I'm going to take some measurements, see where we're at height wise. If it's still too high in the back, then we'll add some drop shackles, or maybe some lowering blocks, probably drop shackles. But we're going to make this truck sit perfectly level down where it needs to be, and it's going to look great. I can already picture it green with the university logo on it and the right wheels. I got a picture in my head. I want to make a t-shirt, but it's just me. I'm a little weird. So that's going to do it for this video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope maybe you learned something if you were watching it for that purpose. If you're not subscribed, why not? Go down there, hit that button. Give me a like, leave me a comment, let me know what you think. Tell me I ruined the truck because I shouldn't have lowered it, and factory height's the only way to go, and whatever else. That's your opinion. You're entitled to it, and I'll be more than happy to respond to the comment. And hit the like, subscribe. If you are subscribed, thank you so much. I can't tell you guys how much I appreciate being able to make these videos for you. But with all that being said, if it wasn't for you guys, I couldn't do this. Y'all have a good one. We'll see you next time.